Well, hey guys, I hope all is well with you and your trading. I just wanted to do a few trade recaps. I know it's been a while since I took the time to recap some trades, but these are just a few trades from the past couple weeks that were, really nice trades, well planned, and I just want to talk about the importance of planning your trades and journaling your trades. One of the ways that I actually use TradingView is a kind of a personal trade journal. And what it enables you to do is essentially, create your analysis and, publish the idea. You can either publish it publicly or privately. Personally, I opt to just mainly just do kind of a personal journal. It's just for myself, not really for anyone else. It's just a way to capture the trade, either as I'm planning it. You'll see some that I plan and publish to my private journal prior to entry, some right as I'm entering, and then some shortly after I enter. I'll publish one. Well, here's one on the Aussie dollar that you can see clearly what was going on here. We kind of broke this main channel, or this main trend line here, and we're just kind of hesitating, you know, just slowly drifting upwards. We finally reached an area of supply, and we had an initial pretty decent reaction out of that supply zone. And I was able to enter on a retracement back up. This ended up being around a 78.6 retracement. I was anticipating these highs to hold, just based off of the context of the price action context, where we were at on the chart. I felt that we were going to drift back lower, so I was able to grab an entry right up here as we were retesting back into that supply zone, and this thing just ended up rolling over very nicely. I was completely out of this trade at the lower channel fill here. I did take it down to the channel, right around this 50% retracement is where I exited this trade. But obviously could have held this for much more, but I was comfortable with the move. I got a little around 3-to-1 risk to reward on that, so that was a nice trade there. Let's see, this was probably the highlight of April, and the end of April, beginning of May, just a huge swing trade. This is a pound New Zealand daily chart. You can see I took this just shortly after I entered. I entered on this daily candle, one of the wicks down, as we were testing this channel bottom here, this rising wedge pattern, and I was anticipating a move up. It just exploded to the upside, and several days this total move ended up being about 600 pips. I only took partial profits about 115 pips, and then just shy of 200 and just shy of 300 pips for the second part of my position. I took that off. But obviously, again, could have just held that for much longer. But again, I was happy. It ended up being, I think, around a 5R, meaning 5 times what I risked. So that was a very nice trade. I'll close these out as I go about them. GJ, let me do the initial GJ short. Okay, so this is a 4-hour chart. You can see clearly price action context came up to around 149 and double topped, which then broke this ascending trend line here, consolidated a little bit, retested, pushed down, and then came back up and essentially double topped at the 61.8 of the initial push down. And if you look closely here, you can actually see on the lower time frames, this was a kind of a double top in of itself. And as we were rejecting that again, I felt pretty confident in going short on a quick little lower time frame retracement entry, and stops just above the high there, and this thing rolled over nicely for this trade ended up being, so I took short, I went risk-free pretty quickly, and then I closed the entire position at 144. If you look at this, essentially this level here, very strong. 1, 2, 3, and ended up being 4 taps right there at 144, and essentially came all the way back to where I would have originally entered at. The way it worked out was, I think it was about a 4.5, 4.5 R, meaning again I risked risked 1 and I made 4.5 return. Okay, so again 260 pips on that one. Very good trade, and actually when I closed this, I actually essentially flipped my position and went long. You can see here, this was the short entry up in here, wrote it down to 144, and essentially went long looking for a retracement. There was a lot of context in here. Again, that very strong level, and an ever so slightly kind of trend line that was maintained, that had been established. And this one obviously went up pretty nicely from my entry. Took a little bit of drawdown on this. Actually was anticipating a stop out as it came within about about 10 pips, 10 or 15 pips of my stop loss, but again, never really closed below those profit targets, and those I don't even remember which fibs it was, but rallied back up, and I actually held on a little bit longer to this as we were starting to drift up to this this trend line, and I took it off somewhere up in and around this region up in here for about 150 pips. So yeah, target wise here was 120, so I took another 30 pips off of this up around 145.60 is where I took that off. Very nice trade. And then I was actually, I'll have to go back and find the trade. I don't know if I journaled it, but essentially after we false broke out and rejected, this actually ended up being a gap. This didn't show up on the other chart that I had, but essentially it ended up being, I was able to enter rate, sorry that keeps showing up, I was able to enter rate in here, and I took that all the way down to 143.20, so that was another 205 pips on that, and that was a very large. So I only had a 30 pip stop on that, I believe, and I took maybe 5 pips of drawdown. 30 divided by 205. That's the wrong way. Let's see. 205 divided by 30. So that was, that's not right. Okay. About 6.8 R on that. So that was a very, very nice trade. That's the one we talked about. Okay, so here's one that I was not sure about, and I had planned kind of my routes earlier. prior to my entry. So at this, when I published this, I was not in the trade at all, but I was monitoring it, and you can see we'll monitor and trade accordingly. If you zoom out a little bit, you can see the price action context a little bit better. Kind of descending wedge pattern or slight squeeze, broke out to the up top, and then put in this big squeeze. Okay, ascending wedge, then we broke down into another channel structure. And it's just, as you analyze charts, you'll find that some are much more channel oriented, some are much more dealing with a lot of fibs, some more just structure, purely structure. So that's just something. This happened to be kind of very channel and pattern type trades. Once we came back up, you can see where we bounced from. Now I was unsure that we were going to continue in this channel, or if we were going to break out and head back up to higher structure, or break down and put in a new low. My plan, or I anticipated a breakdown just based off of what we had been doing previously. You can see, the chart doesn't show up back here, but we were essentially in a downtrend on the higher time frames. We had just broken out of this, kind of this really large squeeze, and so I was anticipating the move down, but I wasn't sure. So I just sat on my hands, and I said we'll monitor and trade accordingly. News came out, and we broke out to the downside, and you can see that once we broke down, put this big wick down, and then kind of just put in this little consolidation structure. That's where I went short, basically on the retest, and then because of what I had said, we were essentially coming off a double bottom. I didn't necessarily want to try and trade it back down through that structure. Yes, I was anticipating that, but I didn't necessarily want to try and just hold that. And you can see, sure enough, big drop right down, and I took profit at, I want to say 66.20 was my take profit order, which coincided with just kind of a fib. And you can see as soon as we tagged 66.20, we did get a quick 20 pip pop, and then eventually would have came back essentially to my entry. This was about a 2R trade, and that was a nice quick trade, essentially filled in just a few hours. So that was a nice one. And the other one that I took actually today was a day trade. I don't get much time to day trade. This was a 15-minute chart after doing kind of some very basic pattern analysis. You can see essentially what I was anticipating. You can see a push down, we box range, we pop up, and then we drop, fake out to the top, and then we drop. This is just kind of a signature trade that I've trained my mind, or my trader's eye, to just kind of pick out sometimes. And sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. But essentially, it's essentially a measured move. What I did was I drew this first yellow one in, copied and pasted it, and just pasted it here, and it essentially worked, picture perfect. The market sometimes likes to repeat itself, and you can see, the news came out and just in one candle. In fact, the news came out and I actually thought that I got stopped out. That's how quick it went. I actually had to go in and check my history to see whether or not I got stopped out because of widening spreads or whatnot. But this was a 3R trade. Nearly got stopped out, but that's this was a day trade. You know, I only risked about 15 pips. Actually, I extended this up to about 20 pips, and with this huge volatility, my target it actually jumped my take profit order by about 5 or 10 pips, just because this was so fast. So I think I actually got off somewhere in between these profit targets down here. But that was a very nice trade this morning that I took on the USD CAD. So you can see this is the process of planning your trades, you know, going into the market. And just so, one of the main things that separates professional traders, or, you know, very good traders, from just your average Joe trader who just goes into the charts looking to trade, is professional traders don't necessarily go into the charts looking for a trade or hunting for a trade. Their whole goal, and this is my whole goal that I have to constantly remind myself of even to this day, is to just go into the charts and perform good analysis. Had I not gone into the charts, I would never had spotted this opportunity on USD CAD. I had about 45 minutes to an hour to trade this morning, so I just sat down, and price was essentially breaking out of this consolidation. I picked up the pattern. It looked like it had just happened like the day before, so I wanted to traded accordingly. And as we came back up, there was nice confluence with fibs and, you know, kind of minor structure based off of the lower time frames, and you can begin to see the shift in trend coming out of a major support level or a major resistance level at 135. And if you map this market out, you can begin to see the shift in trend. Okay, and it's all about being able to map the market. And that's exactly how I did it, and this ended up being a very nice quick trade, so quick that I thought I got stopped out and had to go in and actually check my trade history. So just take all this for what it is, whether I'm not affiliated with Traders Way or Trading View. So if you want to use it, use it. They do have a free version, and you can do all this stuff that I've talked about on the free version. It's a very good little method to keep track of your trades, to review your trades, try and critique them, you know, figure out, well, why didn't this work, or why did this work the way it did, and go forward trading that. So hope you found value in this, and take care. Have a fantastic weekend, and I'll try and be a little bit more better about recording these as they, you know, are progressing. So, all right, take care.